Hello and welcome to yet another episode of the AnxietyRX Podcast. I am your host, Dr. Russell Kennedy, a medical doctor and clinical neuroscientist who suffered from anxiety, crippling anxiety myself for many, many years. Tried every single therapy there was except frog venom therapy. I didn't do frog venom. That was the only one I didn't do. That was the only one I did. But today I have a very special guest with me. I've been on her podcast a couple of years ago. I really loved her just general, almost folksy way of kind of taking, scientific and metaphysical subjects. She has a coaching program. Again, her podcast is called Cracking Open. I've been on it. I loved it. And I just love talking to her. So when I got a chance to talk to her again, I did. So Molly Carroll, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. It's such a gift to be here.
Yeah. So, we talked a little bit before. It's like, what are we going to talk about? It's like you just sent your son to school.
Yes.
You've been to India on your own. I'm just gonna have a few teasers in here. You've been to India on your own, as I have, and you kind of lost both your parents, and I'm in the process right now of kind of losing my mother. So there's a lot of stuff to talk about. Typically, we talk about anxiety and how it all affects, but I think just taking anxiety from a more humanistic kind of practical realm might be nice. So which one of those things do you want to dip into first, Mo?
I think the one that's closest to my heart right now is dropping off my son at college.
Okay.
And then, we could, and those weave into my trip to India and the loss of my parents,
Sure.
Because it is an experience of grief. As a licensed therapist and someone who's been working in mental health and education for 30 years and dealt with anxiety and depression and addiction and for so long, and as a Jungian, I'm a Jungian psychotherapist. So I was trained under Carl Jung, but it's like the wounded healer. I think we name these things like, you're like, okay, I'm going to focus on anxiety. It's going to be around every corner,
Yeah. The shadow. Yes.
The shadow, right? The light and the dark, the integration. So I think being the wounded healer, I'm still in it, go through this experience of letting my first son go to college. So I have two children. I have my son, Tommy, and my daughter, Cora, 18 and 16. And, everyone tells you it's going to be an intense experience, and I've watched other friends go through it. But until you experience the literal body, somatic, visceral heartache and heartbreak, I just don't think you can understand. And I think the other thing that I think is important for your listeners to know, and so they don't feel, because my main intention for any time I talk, is around helping people not feel so alone.
Sure.
And that we're all connected, and that I don't care what they look like on Instagram or on the pages of the New York Times, everyone struggles. We all go through our ups and downs, right? So this one has really taught me around the aspect around letting your children leave brings up many life transitions. It's made me look at the passing of time, probably similar to like as my parents dying, or you look at your mom, like, how am I at this age when my kid's going to college? Or the death of my parents. It's made me look at my marriage and, oh my gosh, my daughter's going to go in 2 years, and who am I married to? And the big questions of who am I? What am I doing in the world without the identity of being a mother or a parent is pretty intense.
Yeah, I think as you do your own shadow work, and a lot of the complicating features of your own psyche that you've trained yourself to be as coping strategies. A lot of these shadow things are coping strategies. And as those coping strategies get pulled away, then the thing that caused the coping strategies to come up in the first place starts to bubble up to the surface.
It's so true. And I think you realize how much we can use our children, or I should speak for myself. I'll own it. I'm learning how much I've used my children to bring me happiness, to, make me feel more important or grounded, or even sometimes in the way of intimacy with my partner, my husband. It's the kids, and just staying busy. So when those are removed, you get to really experience from a somatic level how deeply embedded our identities and our ego is to how we show the outside world. And
totally.
Right. So it's been and then there's just the visceral heartache of you grew this. I've said a couple things. It feels unnatural. Like from a historical perspective, we were all living under one community and bringing food in and cooking and sharing and dancing and singing and storytelling as a community, not as these silos of a home where then, family members are scattered throughout lands, and we're supposed to kind of go through this on our own. And then on the third part, I would say is just as we talked about the mother-father role or partner role, I do think I'm having a different experience. I can only speak for myself of growing this human being in your body. So you're going to feel the severing of that tie, cutting that cord on a visceral body level. So yeah, obviously going through a few things, Russ, there, just a little bit.
Just toss it in. Well, I've always said, like, this is one of the things that I say in my book, and I say all the time, that all anxiety is separation anxiety, and it's mostly separation from yourself. Mostly, right? So when you get separated from other people, it just highlights that separation from yourself and why we need to heal in community, why we need to heal with other people. So to jump right in, what are you going to miss about your son the most?
That's a great question. If you have children or each person you interact with brings a different energy.
Totally.
We bring a different vibration. And I feel like my son's vibration was one of high intensity, high experiences, a lot of talking, a lot of energy. He's a competitive athlete, so he went to go playing soccer in college. So the sport thing, and then the friends, he was one of those people that the friends were in the house. So I think I'll miss one of the things most is just I grew up in a family of 5 kids. I have 22 people now in my family. All my work is around community and human connection. Go figure. So I think just that noise and the energy that children and kids bring, the liveliness, the play, the joking, that we as adults kind of lack a little bit. He has a lot of that. And again, he, just his way of bringing a lot of energy and life to the home and to my life. Yeah, I think I'm going to miss.
I get that, because, over here at my house in Victoria, British Columbia, Canada, for a long time, it's just been me and Cynthia. Cynthia is also a somatic trauma therapist. And then our sons, Alex and Michael, are my stepsons. They're Cynthia's biological sons. Alex is becoming a therapist, so he's getting his master's in counseling therapy. Michael is this, he's 20 years old, but he's like a savant for, he doesn't drink. He wants a conscious relationship. He's like 20 and he wants this conscious relationship, right? So now they both have girlfriends. So this is the first time they both have had girlfriends. So now both girls come over and they're just a joy. And Cynthia is just basking in it because for so long she lived with me, which a little bit on the masculine side, a little bit on the messy side and that kind of stuff. Alex and Michael, who are both pretty kind of male oriented, 2 male dogs, one of which is just passed on. Buddha's just passed on. I haven't said that in the podcast yet, but Buddha passed about a month and a half ago.
Russ.
Yeah. But, and now we have Ellie. So she's 3. She's the other female dog in the house. But up until then, there was like me, Alex, Michael, Buddha, and Riley. There was 5 testosterone beings and Cynthia. And now she has these lovely, feeling, expressive. They want to do stuff with her. They want to go for walks with her. They want to, furniture with her. And now she's just in heaven. Now, one of them had to go back to Saskatchewan and she's going to come back out here. But just to see the impact of this sort of community around us, it's so powerful. And it breaks my heart to see that so many people are so anxious because they resist the very connection they need the most, right? And I think that that's one of the reasons. I think that we all kind of love ourselves, not to go too woo on you right off the top.
I'll go woo.
We develop these blocks, and I look at them almost like doorstops. Those triangular doorstops. We put them in, and then we create these reactive selves, these coping strategies, this reactive part of ourselves as children to adapt, creating a shadow, adapt to what our family of origin, the traumas of our family of origin, and then they stay stuck in there and they're hard to pull out. So when we do have someone leave for college or whatever, those wounds, as I was saying just a few minutes ago, get reignited and bubble back up to the surface.
You are so right. I mean, I think what you're saying is so true. It's like one of these opportunities, and I know this is an opportunity in my life because of the inner work I've done and gone to therapy and plant medicine and everything you and I have talked about, right? Is that this is an opportunity for me to look at another layer of wounds, whether that's the death of my parents. My dad died when I was 39. My mom died when I was in my 40s. So it's like I lost both my parents, not like in my teens, but younger than like 50, 60, 70.
Sure. Yeah,
They both died in their 70s, way too young. But,
right.
but I did feel like as my son was leaving, I had the same feelings of knowing both my parents are dying. Like that feeling that, you maybe similar to what you're going through with your mom right now, like, this life is coming to an end and it will never be the same. It'll change.
Right.
So looking at if anyone's listening to their kids going to college or their kids going to trade school or their kids leaving the home and they're feeling grief, to not shame themselves around that, because that just re-traumatizes the wound,
right,
and does create more anxiety and depression. And to allow themselves, as Dan Siegel says, to feel, to heal, and let the grief move through you versus resistant, putting that doorstop in there.
Yeah.
Because
And the
that's
more
just,
doorstops that are in there, the harder it is to let grief go through. I think that's what it comes down to. And that's what, having a childhood that's full of attachment and secure connection, which very few of us ever got, just allows, negative emotion. I use negative in a sort of a descriptive way there, to flow through you. And now we live in this society where there's retail therapy, like don't feel negative emotion. And I saw somebody on Instagram the other day, actually it was this morning, saying, all this, sit in the emotion is a bunch of crap. It's like, no, it's not actually. But if you sit in the emotion and you ruminate at the same time, you're just spinning your wheels. You're going to, what I call the alarm anxiety cycle. You're just going to stay in that cycle forever. Like there's no escape out of that cycle. But if you sit in there, and my little mantra for this is sensation without explanation. And I write about that a lot in the book. It's just, I can feel the sensation of it. I can feel the sensation of grief. And if I allow myself to feel that sensation of grief without resisting, without contracting, there's another great saying, I'm kind of bombarding you here, by Kathy Kane, PhD, one of my kind of idols. Both K's, Kathy with a K, Kane with a K. And she has this process called objecting without contracting. So it's like, you could do this with your son. You could say, I don't like the fact that he's gone, but I'm not going to contract around it. I'm not going to resist it. I'm just going to allow it to be there. And then you get a chance to metabolize the emotion and process it. Because if every time you go in, it's like, oh, and his friends were around and, I really love the way you did this and that, you're really just dangling yourself over the gates of hell.
Oh, it's so true. I mean, two things you said, two things resonate with. Like, I would use contraction in a different way too. I've looked at like this as birth, and I apologize for all those men out there or people who haven't had children, and you don't know the feeling of a contraction and then you get a pause, and you have a contraction and a pause. Or just think about it.
Okay with it, Molly. I think we're okay with it.
Or the ebb and flow, right? Or water. Like, I don't want to leave any men out, but or women who haven't had children. Right, but it's like
babies. It's like, I don't want to do that.
Yeah, exactly. You're okay with it. I know. Yeah. But to remind yourself, this is a part that is a tightening. It's an intensity. But can we start with the breath?
Right.
Can you just start with breathing? And then maybe you can go into the body and say, okay, can I let my body feel this and not resist it? Because when we're having birth, it will pass. And we know an emotion lasts for 90 seconds. I mean, so it's going to pass. And then we know that tears, do you know what tears taste like?
Yes.
Salt.
Yeah.
Right? And salt dissolves wounds. So
Ooh, look at that.
Right? So it's like you got to just let yourself feel it. And like you said, there's those doorstops. But I so believe in people. And anyone one person may listen to this, and the next time they have to cry, they don't stop themselves because of it. I'm like, just give yourself 90 seconds. And that dissolves those doorstops. Maybe not all of them, but maybe one of them, right? Because I'm a therapist, I know all this shit. Can I cuss? Sorry.
Yeah.
I didn't know if I
No,
could.
no,
Okay.
you can say whatever you want.
I know all this. And yet when my parents died, I think my dad died on a Tuesday and I was back seeing clients on a Friday.
Right.
I mean, I packed my schedule. I did the TED Talks and the books and all that stuff. I did not want to feel the pain of that. Right. And as I'm starting to feel the pain, when I was starting to feel about 2 to 3 months ago, the noticing that my son's going to leave, and I started to feel it, like kind of knowing my parents were going to die, I let myself feel. and used it as an opportunity of transformation.
And where do you feel that pain, Molly? Like where, like as a little somatic
In the body?
therapist?
Sure.
Yeah. Where in the body though?
For me personally, it's in the heart chakra, the fourth
Okay.
chakra, and the gut.
Okay.
I mean,
So is it superficial? Is it deep? This is what I do with people all the time. So
it's so good.
is it superficial, deep?
It's very deep.
Okay. Pain or a pressure?
Pressure?
Pressure. So it's a deep pressure. Would it have a color to it? It might not. But if you really settle into it and just imagine him leaving, or he's already gone, I guess.
Oh, yes, I
Like what
know.
color is it? If it has a color, it may not.
No, it is. It's a red.
Okay,
It's
red.
a heart. It's a red. I mean, the heart chakra is green. I always see red like the color of a heart, you know?
Okay. Like deep red?
Uh-huh.
Okay. Does it have a temperature?
Mm.
Hot, cold, warm?
No, it's pretty neutral.
Okay. What about a texture? Is it rough, pointy,
You know what?
edgy?
It's like umbilical cordy. I mean,
Umbilical cordy. That
yeah,
is
it's
a
kind of that
freaking
fibrous,
great way of describing it.
right?
I have
Yeah.
never heard that before. Because when I talk to people about their alarm, they'll start off with, yes, this is the location, this is what it is. And then I'll say, well, superficial or deep? Well, it's kind of deep, but maybe not, maybe superficial. And then I go into temperature, no, maybe hot, and the deeper I go into it, the more, then they start thinking, one lady said, oh, it feels hollow. It feels alone. Like that's not a description of a sensation. I mean, it is in a way, but we get this descriptive language, and Mark Willin talks about the guru of inherited family trauma talks about this. We get this descriptive language, but umbilical cordy is such, that I think you're going to be able to kind of connect with that feeling. So I would stay with it. So can you put your hand over that umbilical cordy feeling and just close your eyes for a second?
Yeah, I love that I'm getting a session.
And just see, yeah. I mean, this is a very sped up version of it.
No.
Normally I would take about 15 or 20 minutes to bring you
Yeah,
into
don't
this.
know. It's good because
So it's just putting your hand over it and just sort of getting into that sensation. Relax your shoulders, relax your jaw. Just allow that sensation of grief or pain or whatever it is to be there. And then I'm going to ask you a quick question, and I want your first answer.
Yeah.
How old are you right now?
18.
18, okay. So what happened at 18? What separation happened at 18?
You know what's so funny is, I mean, it's when I left for college.
It's funny that that's the same age he left for college too, right?
Exactly. But I had such a different experience of attachment to my family. Right? I was put on a plane.
Right.
To Flagstaff, Arizona from Omaha, Nebraska with my trunk. Got a cab and went to my dorm. Right? It's like, it's such a different experience. But so 18 was the number that first came to me. But it's, you know what I mean? It's almost kind of when I that's the first number. So there's probably a part of that was my separation from my family of origin.
Sure.
But also I really feel like it's something different, not around childhood.
Okay.
And more around the identity of being a parent. And that's what I think is so important for your listeners to hear, is around when we are forced to really look at the identity and how we attach to our identities. Therapist, doctor, parents, partner, millionaire, crack addict. I mean, whatever you want to say. And we take that on. We carry that like a cloak of our coat of arms or a cloak around us. And that's more kind of what I'm looking at severing. So it's almost kind of like I'm 53. Like I'm also, the age is 53 of cutting that cord.
Everybody's doing stuff lately. Everybody's doing stuff later now. So here's how I get all my little intuitive things that I do.
Yes.
I only share this with people that I know get it. My idea is that you had a lot of grief when you got separated from at 18 and had to fly away to Flagstaff and that kind of thing. I think you're re-experiencing that grief. And I think what you're doing on some level is going into your cognition saying, oh, this is what all parents feel, rather than kind of going, oh, this is just how I felt when I was 18. I really want to go back and find that 18-year-old and say, it must have been really hard for you to be put on that plane and flying away to a new place, and just see what she says back to you. Now I'm going really deep with you, Molly. I wouldn't
Oh
normally
no,
do
this
this
I wrote
with
in
you,
my
but I
notes.
know.
This
But
is
I,
no, this is what
yeah,
I do. The
yeah,
healing of the I
yeah.
call it healing of the wounded child. Whatever, right? So I do this work.
I know.
Yeah, this is beautiful. I mean, this I'm so grateful. And I have that's so funny. Thank you for that because I haven't done that yet. I've done it to the woman who lost her parents because I thought
Sure.
this was grief. And I did it to the mother, like you're saying, all people go through this. But that you just asked me that, I went to 18 and I kind of joke about it, like, oh, my parents stuck me on a plane and,
Exactly. That's what we do.
and people's reaction was a little bit like, really?
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, parents in the 70s and the 80s, they didn't, um, but yeah, I mean, and the only time they came to visit me was graduation. So
Right.
they have four
So
other kids. And I mean, I can justify.
well, that's it. And I think that there's an easy groove for you to go in. And it's true with all of us. Like, I'm not like nailing you to the wall with this. I'm saying all of us, when there's a sensitivity that's too much for us to bear, we go into our cognition and we try to explain it, because when we do explain it and we do make sense of it on some level, our ventral tegmental area in our brain starts secreting dopamine, which says, hey, you're on the right track. And then when we're in a painful situation like that situation, the brainstem starts secreting endorphins and enkephalins, our brain's natural painkillers. So in a way, we get rewarded for making this cognitive explanation, but we're really not allowing ourselves to feel what the root cause of the pain is. So it's really, can you go back? Cognitive explanations are fine because they allow you to cope, but can you actually go back and sit in the feeling?
Mm-hmm.
And then sometimes what I would do with you is I say, okay, get that umbilical cordy feeling, and then say, what was the best time ever you had with your son? And then I'll pendulate back and forth between the best time you ever had with him and this feeling of loss for him. Because it's kind of like getting, making a cup of tea that's way too hot. And then you just go on, you put in some cold water. Now it's drinkable. It's kind of the same thing. Like the pain is so intense that you need something to kind of buffer it a little bit. And I think it's not cheating in a way, because people say, oh, you just have to, like the gurus will say, oh, you just have to stay in the pain until it resolves. I don't agree with that necessarily.
Me neither.
But I think we do need that thing. And then when you do that, you actually see, hey, there is another way other than going up into my cognition. I am able to kind of sit with it, because Bessel van der Kolk talks about that. I know I'm speaking a lot here. I'm going to let you go in a minute. But and The Body Keeps the Score. And Bessel van der Kolk says, we're not teaching people how to get rid of their anxiety. What we're doing is we're teaching them how to acclimatize to the sensation. He doesn't call it alarm. I call it alarm. Acclimatize to this alarm in their system so that it doesn't fire them into their head all the time. Because as soon as you feel pain, if you go into your head every single time, you never actually deal with the pain. And it just stays in suspended animation forever. And then what we do is we get locked in these coping strategies, and the shadow never gets any light shone on it.
No, I agree with you 100%. I mean, I would say, I would add to that and say that the cognition is a great place to start. And it is one of my core beliefs in life and as a therapist or whatever is that meet people where they are. And some people have only worked from that space, and that's the only place they know how to. And even just, I mean, I've worked with people where I say, how does that make you feel? And if they were raised in some sort of religion where they weren't allowed to be sick, or in a culture where like mom and dad would never let you, don't get over your feelings or you don't feel anything. But the key is, it's almost kind of like you have your cell phone, but until you plug it into a charger, it's not going to work, right? So that charging station is really around moving from that cognitive place. The Sufis say the head is a servant to the heart. So the heart, so once we can meet you at your head, and then I can drop people into their body, even just through touch or smell, or like your sit bones on the couch. What do you feel on my couch? And they'll say, oh, it's velvet or whatever. I mean, the smallest things. I mean, I don't know about you, Russ. I mean, but I feel like I've been doing this work forever and learning more that less is more, and it doesn't have to be so complicated. Totally. People really need a few things: to be seen, to be heard, to feel safe, and to be loved.
Perfect segue into this acronym
Pack.
that I put into my I made this one up out of my
Oh,
book. It's like, this is what you should have got when you were younger. So you should have been seen, heard, opened to by your parent, understood, loved, and defended. That's what should stands for. So now, can you do that for yourself? Can you see yourself? Can you hear yourself? Can you open to yourself? Can you understand yourself? Can you love yourself? Can you defend yourself instead of taking all these jabs, these judgments, abandonments, blames, and shames of yourself? Can you do that? Now, that requires a certain level of curiosity and cognitive function, because you have to pull yourself out of the emotional abyss to kind of go, oh, what did Dr. Kennedy say? He said, I should be able to do this. What does should stand for again? And then you get a chance to do it. But the thing is, when we get into survival physiology, we shut off our rational brain, which is why I'm not that crazy about CBT.
yeah.
I think it's I think it's a helpful coping strategy.
Yeah.
But
I hear you.
if your CBT will fail you when you need it the most, because it requires your cognitive brain to work. So that's what I mean. And we need both. I'm not against it by any means, but unless there's some sort of somatic piece in there to ground it, to create a foundation, all the cognitive work just doesn't stick. It just doesn't stay there. It doesn't. In Ayurvedic medicine, the medicine of ancient India, they call it vata, air. Like, thoughts are air. There's no grounding there. There's no earth there. So it's just a matter of, like I said, we can't take their coping strategies away, which is essentially what I took a 15-minute explanation to just say what you said in one sentence.
No, I think it's helpful. And I would say, if I had to look back and said the number one thing that I've seen help the most people is somatics, is breath and body.
Yeah.
Breath and body. And however you need to get there is where I meet people. So breath and body, maybe someone's a marathon runner and they're like, Molly, I got on the road. I'm like, great. Just take a moment to be aware of your breath and aware of your body, and imagine anything you're holding on to, any trauma, any sadness, any fears, any negative thoughts, to go through your body, out your feet, and into the soil, because Mother Earth is such a powerful healer, and she will hold it all. She will take it for you. So like, if they're a marathon runner, or let's say I'm married to a scientist, right? So I'm married to, and he's a 5th generation. So my father-in-law is a scientist. Anyway, so it's more just, even he's actually an incredibly open-hearted and intimate person, but to even just say, if I'm working with someone, a doctor, or sorry, you're kind of not the norm of a lot of medical. I worked with a lot of doctors.
I'm kind of very conventional on some levels. Like, some things I think are great, and not just oh, they're great for emergency situations. There are some things in allopathic medicine that are freaking fantastic. But there are also things that especially for chronic disease, are not very good.
Right. So you sit there and you say, you could ask them questions of like, talk to me about an experience that you had that gave you chills. What was it like when you saw your child be born? How did it feel for you to fall in love? Just getting in the body. I'm a big believer, because I know, trauma is in the body, and the only way to release trauma is through the body. There's one entry and there's one entry out. And so the mind is just a small portion of that. So yeah, I would say, I would agree with you that it's a place to start, but it's the ultimate charging station. The superpower is when you can go to breath and body.
Yeah. And so often people resist what they need the most. Like, for me, and I've said this before on the podcast, like, my dad could be very playful, loving, fun, kind, all that stuff, but he could also be quite crazy. He was bipolar and schizophrenic. So what I learned was, it's not safe to love him, because it'll eventually bite you in the ass. Like, it'll eventually, like, he'll go into a horrible depression, and you want to play baseball, but he can't, because he can't get out of bed. So there is, after a while, after doing this for like 6, 7, 8, 10 years, in my sort of from 9 till maybe 20 years old, after a while, I just got further and further and further away from him emotionally, because it just hurt too much to love him and have him disappear on me like that. So I learned that love wasn't safe. So, and I tell people, like, there's, your box, you have a box, like, it's almost like a box of consciousness, and it's filled with fear and love. There's only fear and love. And the more fear you push into the box, the more love you push out. And the more love you push into the box, the more fear you push out. Now, we resist the reason why I had anxiety for so long is because I was afraid of allowing love back in because of what love, the vulnerability of love in my childhood, what it meant. So I was screwed because the only way to heal my anxiety was to allow love in, yet love is not safe. So it's just like that was the catch-22 I was stuck in for so long, and finally just had to break through and go, look, leap of faith. You just got to trust love. You just got to trust it, even though it feels unsafe. You have to trust it, and just you will break through, and you will. And I did break through.
What happens though when you get that little boy and you start to feel that fear of love, even now knowing everything you know and all the work you've done?
Oh, I still get him. He still goes unconscious. He still drives me into my emotional brain and out of my rational brain, for sure. I still freak out. Every once in a while, Cynthia and I will have like an argument about something, and I will descend into my inner 7-year-old. It'll trigger her. She's now her inner 8-year-old. And we actually have pictures of each other when we're 7 and 8 years old in the house. And I will go down and look at her 8-year-old picture and say, this is the person you're dealing with right now. And it just warms my heart. It allows me to kind of go, oh, this is who I'm dealing with. I'm not dealing with this sort of omnipotent figure, because Cynthia, although she's quiet, can be very powerful. So it's one of those things where I see her for who she is. I see the child in her. And when you see the child in your partner, it makes it so much easier to approach them again, as opposed to just this horrible feeling like, oh, they're going to cut you down or they're going to whatever. If you see them as their inner self, and that's why I say, put up a picture of yourself when you're in your mirror, or someplace where you're younger, and connect with yourself as well. Like connect with that 8-year-old picture of yourself. I have it on my phone. I have it on my text messages. Whenever I send a text message, there's a picture of my 8-year-old self playing baseball on it.
Yeah, well, what I hear is what it drops you into is compassion.
I think that's probably true. I think that's probably what it is. I think it pulls away that primal activating sort of norepinephrine in the brain, cortisol in the body, survival, where you just lose your freaking mind. And now when your mind comes back, I mean, the analogy, when I did stand up, I used to have this joke. I can't remember what it was now, but it's like when you have a fight with your girlfriend and you say, that's it, this relationship is over, I can't take this anymore, and you walk out, and for about 5 or 6 hours, you're good with it. It's like, she's not the right person for me. Right. I know she's not right. But then evening comes around and you go, I might have overreacted there. That might have been a bit much, So it's like, it just shows you how much your body sensation, how much that sensation of alarm can overrule, a lot of those doorstops that are stuck in you. Like they can pull those doorstops out. But if every time you get into the situation, you double down on, it's not safe to trust love, I'm just going to stay lone wolf, I'm going to do all this sort of thing, you just basically, put a nail in your own coffin.
Well, and you spoke about acronyms. I have one too. That's why I was wondering if you'd read about it. Is PAC, that has helped a lot of people when they're in that part of their brain, when they're in that part of the trauma body, or their 8-year-old little girl or little 7-year-old little boy. And it stands for presence, awareness, and compassion. And I could do it in 15 seconds. I could do it for 15 minutes. And it's around getting really present with what's going on right now in the body and kind of getting out of the mind, like what you just did with me a little bit, right? So getting really present of like, oh, Cynthia said this, or I did that, or, you kind of, but it's like, where is it in the body? Getting really aware of the color, the texture,
shape,
and it actually, like a child when it wants a glass of water and you're not listening to it, it gets louder, it gets bigger. It's almost kind of like our body's like, finally, you're listening to me. So I'm going to intensify this opportunity. And then kind of what I was saying is then when you ultimately bring compassion, it's the most beautiful salve and medicine for trauma.
Yeah.
And it usually comes with a mantra or like, you're okay. Yeah. This too shall pass. I'm so sorry that happened to you. I'm so sorry.
And then I add, like, put your hand over the alarm, because everybody has, a place where they feel the alarm. Some people have it in multiple places. That's more rare, but it happens. So I usually get people to find, mine is in my solar plexus. Right? Some people it's in their heart, some people it's in their throat. I find a tremendous number of young women who had domineering, perfectionistic mothers have so much alarm in their throat because they wanted to say something to their mother, but they couldn't. So the energy just gets trapped there. So it's just one of those things where it's like, okay, put your hand over that area. Can you see that little girl who, had to be perfect, who couldn't wear that particular dress or was starting to gain weight and her mother freaked out? Like, can you find that little girl in there? Because that's what we'll revert back to. All emotional overreactions, almost all of them are age regressions. So, and there's a part of our brain called the insula, and the insular cortex is kind of like the mediator. It's very deep in our brain, the mediator between top down and bottom up. So what our mind says, our body feels through the insula, and what our body feels, our mind says through the insula as well. And I believe the insula actually makes an emotional signature of trauma in you when you were young. I had one of my patients who was 7 years old. He used to get hit by his dad. And I tell him, your insula has made this emotional signature. So you will feel now exactly the same way. Your body will feel exactly the same way now than you did back then. And then you're older now. So your cognitive structures will come in and say, well, no, I'm okay now. This is it. But really, it's finding that 7-year-old, putting your hand over it, breathing into it, having compassion for that younger child. Because a lot of what we do is we start, when he said, my friend who got hit by his dad, he started looking at that 7-year-old as bad. So he separated from him. So as soon as you separated from yourself, judge, abandon, blame, and shame from yourself, you create a split. And when you create a split, you create this alarm energy in your body, and it stays in there, and it feeds the worries of your mind. So if you treat the underlying cause, which is this alarm energy in our body, this energy of disconnection, of separation, the anxious thoughts just go away because there's nothing left to feed them. But in this society, we're so stuck on, think better, positive psychology. You've got to think better. It's so difficult, Molly, to think in opposition to how your body feels.
I agree. And I mean, I think the other thing that happens when people go through trauma at a young age is they learn how to disassociate because they had to.
Yeah.
Right. So then it's more about also not only putting your hand on your body and where's the hurt and going in, but it's more about integration. Like, how do we integrate that 7-year-old back into the 50-year-old and not separate, because that's the separation of why we act like a 15-year-old with a fight with our, So that's another piece of my work, is working with people's trauma and integrating them back to the whole self and to the parts of their being of not walking through the world in many, many different parts. The internal family systems is a great system because you're able, IFS, Schwartz is able to, you're able to look at your different parts and who's got the front seat of the bus right now, who's driving the bus. But my work is also like, can we integrate all parts in one, that's Jung also believed too, like that the Jung, the light and the dark are in one area of the being. And that with the more integration you have, the more acceptance you have, the more compassion you have, the more wholeness and healing you have.
Yeah. And I think the self energy model of IFS, I think, is a really, really good one. And I think the way I imagine that is that self energy starts out, and then, you get bullied, you get rejected, you have birth trauma, so there's little cracks that form in that sort of separate these little almost little apartments, almost these little, gaps in the self. And then those things develop their own coping strategies. And then the self becomes smaller and smaller and smaller. You can make an intellectual argument that the self energy is always the same and it's always consciousness. And I think that's fine. But I think as a metaphor, just seeing all these little cracks, and the more trauma that you have, the more cracks, the more compartmentalization you have of self, the harder it is to integrate negative emotion and even feel positive emotion.
I know every time you say cracks, I can't help myself but think about cracking open, and it's all around,
There
the Leonard Cohen is, when we crack it's when the light gets in.
Exactly.
So yeah, I mean, the other thing I was thinking about is finding anyone listening today, finding those communities and those people and those places within yourself or in safety where you can crack and you can let the light in and you can let the doorstops out and you can, breathe through the trauma. And I mean, there's such a level of protection that people are carrying around very unconsciously. It's not conscious. It's incredibly unconscious. And I always say, until one or two things happens, like the D's, death, divorce, or disease. Those are ones that really crack open a lot of people. It's like, oh God, death, divorce, or disease, right? Well, force me, I can't tell you my friends who've had cancer have said, I don't want to ever go through it again, but it absolutely changed my life. I'll never look at life the same. It cracked me open in a way to let my learn to receive, to learn how to know what's important in my life, to realize, talking about anxiety, a lot of people who have cancer, yes, they do have anxiety, but a lot of people don't.
Yeah.
They have a lot less anxiety than when they're running around, going to exercise class, dropping their kids off at school, running to a meeting, running to the grocery store. Can you tell I'm describing moms? A lot of moms.
Right.
And so, myself, AK, and, and just that cracking allows us to surrender to what is and be in the present moment, which, as you know, and speak about quite often, it's in the present moment that, anxiety is more about future, depression is more about past. So really helping people breathe through the body to get into presence of truth is really important.
Which I find men have a very difficult time doing. Like that's my little, that's where I'd like to go, is trying to help men understand that there is a way out. We don't have to kill ourselves at 4 times the rate that women do, because we've been indoctrinated from a young age not to share, not to have tears. Oh, I wanted to tell you earlier on about tears. Do you know that biochemically tears of joy are different than tears of sorrow?
No.
Yeah, interesting. They've studied.
Say more.
So they've studied the composition of tears of sorrow and tears of joy, and they are different chemically, even though they come from the lacrimal glands and that kind of thing too. So just, and I think one of the reasons why men have such a difficult time in society is, well, there's a number, but is that they're not allowed to cry. And crying, the thing about crying, and Gordon Neufeld, who's my sort of mentor in developmental psychology, talks about this. Crying is adaptive. So basically, your dog has died, your marriage is breaking up, there's no hope for either one of them. But when you have tears, for some reason, the external thing hasn't changed, but your internal perception of those things becomes softer. And because we've taken tears away from men, they don't have that coping strategy to be able to go into that. And instead, often we'll go into alcohol, medications, drugs, whatever. I mean, typically women will go to pharmaceutical medications. Typically men will go to alcohol. That's a generalization. It's not true for everyone, of course, but that's generally kind of what happens. And then alcohol works for a while. And I think that's one of the seductive natures of alcohol for men, is it does tend to allow you to, like, hey, I'm coping, I'm doing okay. My divorce is a year ago, but I'm drinking every night. And, eventually the wheels will fall off that bus.
Yeah, they always say alcohol works until it doesn't.
Yep.
You speaking of that reminds me, I adore a man named Shaka Senghor, and I'm sitting there racking my brain. I interviewed him for the podcast. I found him on Super Soul Sunday with Oprah, and he spent 19 years in prison for murdering someone. And when we got on the podcast, I said, he's like, I tell my story all the time. I said, well, what do you want to talk about? He said, I want to talk about male vulnerability. And he said, if I would have been able to be more vulnerable as a man, he grew up in a tough neighborhood. He was led to drugs and selling drugs and all that world. He was abused as a child. And, I would have been able to express myself in a different way. And the same with Jeff Grant, who also went to prison for opioids. And I interviewed him on the podcast, and he said the same thing. I was not raised as a man. And thinking of my son leaving for college as well. Yeah. Trying to raise this next generation of men, and like, he's an athlete. He's got to close up a lot of emotions and pain. And yet I've also raised him with chakras and crystals and oils and energetic healings and cupping and acupuncture points, because I wanted him to find that balance and my daughter too, but that our world is changing. Our consciousness is changing.
And just making it more acceptable for men.
Humanity needs to also recognize, for us to save this planet and to connect on a deeper level, we all have to become more conscious in a different way of identity of male and female. What does that mean? Why do we attach these things? And that, and I think that is shifting with people like you, and there's other men that I know. Jeff Wright is a therapist. He's working a lot with male vulnerability, and other men that I am very grateful for to step in to help people. And that helps also with anxiety.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I think that I had kind of like the sweet spot of trauma in a way. My mother, my mother's British. She's a registered nurse. She's very dutiful. There's not a lot of I love yous. There's not a lot of hugs when I was younger, that kind of thing. But I always knew she was there for me, for sure. My dad was the one who was by the love and the support and the caring and that kind of thing. And then when he went off the rails and I lost him, there was kind of like, you know what? I can become a doctor. I'm not so traumatized that I can't actually kind of rise above it and do it. Now, if you had added in, sexual abuse or something like that, I may have collapsed. But I had kind of like the sweet spot of trauma where my life wasn't great. There was a couple points in my life where I thought, I don't want to live anymore. But in general, I had enough trauma that I thought, okay, I know how this feels. I know how I can relate to someone who's in anxiety and is thinking about taking their own life because I've been there before.
Mm-hmm.
But I have this training behind me and this kind of sensitivity and understanding of human nature and a little bit of clairsentience or whatever it is. I don't know the Powerball numbers, but I can read things in people. So I've got this sort of nice combination of things that has allowed me to kind of write a book and to sort of go on larger platforms and that kind of thing, because I had just enough trauma that I was able to overcome it. Right?
Mm-hmm.
If anymore, I might have just collapsed, and I came close to collapsing, especially in medical school. Like I didn't think I was going to make it for a long time, both in medical school and in life. So it gives me this position, like I've been there. I know what it's like to look at life like you look right and it's abhorrent, and you look left and it's abhorrent. I was thinking about that this morning, actually. It's such a horrible place to be. There is a way out, but you can't see it. Like you just can't see it. Like you don't see. So it's basically just putting one foot in front of the other each day, like just doing it and doing it, doing it. And eventually, I had the idea, okay, I'll write this book. So that kind of lit me up. That gave me some purpose and direction and that kind of thing. And then finding your purpose. And I think a lot of purpose comes from trauma, just as you were saying early on.
Yeah, the wounded healer.
Yeah.
Of where you go with that. And yes, I mean, I was very lucky too. I wasn't raised with much trauma. I mean, I was not raised in a perfect childhood either, but I had two parents that
Well,
were.
they stuck you on a plane.
They said, little do they know, sorry, mom and dad up in heaven or wherever you are. Yeah, that I'm going through that little bit of that. But yeah, no, I mean, I agree with you. I think there's a lot to be said around, looking at our life. I was thinking about this before we were going to talk about storytelling and the power of storytelling. And what happens when we tell stories is we have heart coherence. If you know anything about heart math, and through tone and through deeper eye contact and connection. And there's such a power in that. It's, besides dance was the first form of connection with humans and creativity, and then storytelling, whether that came in whatever forms. So it's just, yeah, like finding that way to connect with another human and through your story. And that's what you're just doing, is you were just sharing your own personal story with your audience. And I'm sure someone else will listen to that and say, me too. I'm not alone.
I have a lot of people that say, I had a mother with bipolar or schizophrenia, or I had a father with bipolar or schizophrenia, or even I had an alcoholic parent, so just relating back to me, it's like, I know that sort of uncertainty, like, are they going to be okay today? Are they going to be drunk today? Are they going to be psychotic today? So there is that, children need that balance, that sort of structure in their lives. And when they don't have it, they go into a reactive self. We have our authentic self, and Gabor Mate talks about this too, about how we capitulate to our parents' demands. We leave our authentic self to maintain the connection, but we will become this reactive self, this people pleaser or whatever it is. And the more you become your reactive self and move away from your authentic self, the more alarm gets created in your system. And then alarm creates anxiety, it creates eating disorders, it creates depression, personality disorders, OCD. Alarm is the root cause of all of this. And this is why, they try and do things in the DSM where they go, okay, well, if you have this disorder, generalized anxiety disorder, if you have 4 of these 9 symptoms for the next 5, it's like you could transpose those symptoms into OCD, you could transpose those into eating disorders. It's like, it's not the underlying cause of this is just this sense of alarm that overwhelmed your little child mind and you stuffed into your body. And then it manifests in different ways, but the underlying cause is the same. So we have to learn, how do we treat that underlying cause? Because just trying to treat eating disorders with giving, 15-year-old women meal plans doesn't work, because you're not actually attacking the root of the problem. You're attacking one of the symptoms, which is the same thing with anxiety. When you attack the worries, you're attacking a symptom. You're not attacking the root cause.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I agree with you completely.
So how do you fix people, Molly? There's a quick question for you. How do you fix people? What do you do?
Well, I'm gonna give you the first thing that came to me, and then I can get a little more clinical. But the first thing is just to let them know they're loved, deeply loved, and that I see them, and I accept them wholeheartedly for who they are. And walking in the door, or coming on a Zoom with me, or wherever they go, retreat, or wherever I'm in a corporate room, or wherever I meet them, I no one's broken here. I'm not here to fix you. You are your own greatest guru. You have everything you need inside you, and I'm going to walk this journey with you.
Because what I've always noticed about you from the time that we talked, which I think was probably like 2 or 3 years ago now.
Right? Yeah, you were you were in the earlier stages.
I think I was. But there's a ton of love in your voice. Like there's a little bit of rasp there, but there's just a ton of love in your voice. And that's why, when I saw it today, it's like, oh, I'm talking to Molly today. It was like, I woke up this morning feeling a little bit like, oh God, like when's the book coming out? Because I've been waiting for this damn book to come out now for months. Comes out next month, September the 17th. So I was like, I'm kind of in this angst. And then I kind of, okay, who am I seeing today? It's like, oh, Molly, I'm seeing Molly today. So I just, the love that comes through your voice, like I feel it, like I really feel it. I really genuinely feel the love and the compassion that you have for other people. But I also feel the suffering that you go through too. Because you can't have one without the other. And it's, how do you manage the suffering? And I think coming back to that wounded healer thing is like, we have to learn how to manage our suffering. And then we learn these little ways. It's like, hey, that kind of works. I'm going to pass that on to my people, So, and I think that's kind of how the wounded healers because it's the wounded healers that change the world. It's the people that grow up with secure attachments and, enough money and enough food and all that kind of stuff. They're pretty content with their lives in general. The template was set for them. But for us, when we have, and like I said, I've had just enough trauma that I was able to sort of overcome it and then help teach about it. I didn't become addicted or into anything like that really would have spiraled me out of control. I had a couple of points in my life where I could have gone that way, but there was this sense that there's something protecting me, and there's something, which is another thing, I'm going to ramble a little bit again. It's like, I think when you have trauma as a child, you lose faith in the world. And faith is so important. It's just sort of just have that sense that, okay, things are going wrong, but I have faith that things will turn out okay. And I think the corollary of that, when you lose faith in the world, you have trauma as a child, is you start thinking that everything is up to you right now. And if you believe that everything is up to you and you're a 5-year-old girl, it's not going to go well for you. You're going to develop a reactive self that's very hyper reactive, very emotional, and it's just going to create a place in your body that you just live from this reactive state and these coping strategies. And what we were saying earlier is, like, when someone comes in to see us, we can't take those coping strategies away from them. We have to let them be cognitive for a while, but it's like gently kind of steering the boat into, okay, where do you feel that in your body?
Yeah, where can you build upon that? Well, I mean, you just said a lot, but I want to pinpoint a couple of things. The first one is thank you. The second one is I want to talk to you about your book. I can feel the anxiety.
Oh, sure.
And you and I have talked about this with the last, like, who am I? Who am I in the world? What is going to happen? I want you to deeply practice trust. And then you brought up childhood and you don't have faith. So all I hear, just, take this with a grain of salt, or actually take it and be like, oh my gosh, this changed my life. The word I want you to step into as your 8-year-old self, you're 18, you're 48, 58, whatever, is faith and trust. Can I trust that I'm guided by something much bigger than myself? If my book hits the New York Times and I'm on every podcast and the whole thing, then if my book helps thrive 5 people, not kill themselves, not die by suicide. Can I trust by spirit and guidance? That's exactly what was supposed to happen. Those 5 people. I have the New York Times that I don't save one life. I mean, 5 people read it. So that's the other thing that came through for me. The other thing is that I think it's when you ask me, what do? I also think it's really important for people listening today to find 2 things in their life, a container and a foundation, to get a little practical.
Okay. What does that look like?
Your foundation is what allows you to move through the world with a little bit of ease and grace. It's not always going to be a lot. That's going to be everything that you find internally within yourself, breath work, meditation, exercise, therapy, yoga, whatever that is, going to see Dr. Russ, going to see Molly, whatever it is. And then that's also going to be around who you spend your time with is so important. What vibrational energy, when we're talking about my son, the vibration he brings in the home, what vibration, what energy, when you walk in a room, what do you feel? Who do you feel connected to? Where do you feel loved? Where do you feel seen? Who asks good questions? Who's a good listener? Where are those people? And spend your time with those. That's your container.
Okay.
That is your container. And then your foundation. And to know, I also am like, I understand trauma. I've studied trauma. I've worked with trauma for years. And I also want people to know that they can step into healing through knowing that's not their story anymore. It doesn't mean just say, oh, pull up your bootstraps or get over it. I'm not saying that. I'm saying you actually have the power to really do the healing when you look at the story and look at where it is in the body. And how am I reacting from that place? And how can I react a different way, whether it's through neural pathways or whether that's through somatics. But to do the work, it's a daily process. It's not a one-hit wonder, this journey. Yeah. What is your daily process every day? Like I knew I was coming to talk to you this morning, right? So I woke up. I read from a book that I'm loving right now, Celebrations by Brianna Wiest. Do you know Brianna Wiest?
No, I don't.
Oh, she's great. Celebrations, is it called? Ceremony. It's called Ceremony.
Okay.
By Brianna Wiest, right? And I journaled a little bit, did some gratitude. I went on a walk with my dog. I talked to the trees and did all that, right? Like what is really supposed to come through me today? Now what am I supposed to say? What's in my head and who I am and all that bullshit. It's like, no, what's supposed to come through me, to share with Russ today, So those things that you were just sharing, it's like, but the biggest thing for you is you've helped so many people already. I mean, love that.
Yeah.
Love around that, Russ. It's really powerful.
I'm getting better at that for sure. I do think that, it is the old wounded healer thing. Like, I'm fully aware of it'll never be enough. Like I could sell 10 million copies of the book. There will be a part of me that thinks it'll never be enough. But I know that part, and I've known that part for a long time. It's the part that actually makes me quote unquote successful. It's the part that's made me a medical doctor and an author and a stand-up comedian and a yoga teacher and all that stuff. I know that part. It's my pusher driver part, and I'm friends with it now. I just, I have this story in the book called Carrot and Stick. So for so many years, when you have a donkey and you want him to do something, you give him a carrot and he'll do it, or you hit him with a stick. For so many years, I hit myself with sticks and it worked, or it had the illusion of working. But now I'm actually giving myself carrots. So it's frustrating waiting for the book to come out on some level, but that's a very small part of it. Mostly I'm just grateful that I've got 2 big publishers that took on the book. I mean, the original sold 90,000 copies as a self-published. So it was like, they both looked at it like, okay. And they sort of bid each other for it. So one got it for the UK, one got it for North America. And it was just like, it was abundance. It was like reward. It's like, I'm on the right track. Right. So this book, the second version of AnxietyRX, is about somewhere between, I would say, 40 and 50% different. It's the same concept. It's the same concept. I've been on 200 podcasts since then. So I'm able to explain it so much better now. It's just so much more practical. So it's like, okay, this is what you do. This is actually how you do it. And I also have my MBRX program, which has got yoga nidra in it. It's got a meditation to help you find your alarm, which is hard for a lot of people. And, those 2 things I think are probably the most effective, like self-helpy things without having your own counselor or therapist that really help you understand what anxiety truly is. It's not your mind. It's basically your body. It's an energy of alarm, background alarm stored in your body that's feeding these thoughts. And then you make the incorrect assumption that the worries are what causes the anxiety. The worries are just a symptom. They're just the byproduct. And that's why, things like CBT and that kind of stuff don't work in the long term, because you're treating a symptom. You're not treating the underlying cause. So thank you for that, Molly. As usual, you always give me something that I can kind of take home and yeah, just trust and faith. I'm just getting so much more attuned to just trust and faith and just waiting. One of the things about anxiety is that, we feel like we can't wait, but just waiting. And I think the reason why a lot of us create chaos in our lives is because if we're juggling 8 plates at once, we don't have the wherewithal to actually go back into our old traumas, right? So we keep ourselves distracted. I have this other acronym I put in the book called MADD, M-A-D-D, nothing against mothers against drug drivers, but it's basically medications, addictions, distractions, and dissociations. So when we feel alarmed, those are the 4 things that we'll go to. And then zombie scrolling Instagram, all that. I'm guilty of all this stuff myself. So, but I can see it. I know what I can see it. So that's kind of, I'm getting to know myself more and more and more. And do I fall down? Yeah, sure I fall down. Sure I fall into alarm. So I get into the pit sometimes. But I know the way out. And once you know the way out, there's just such a feeling of safety in that. It doesn't feel good to be in alarm, but I also know, like we were saying earlier, like when you're giving birth to something, the contraction comes up and then it eases, and then it comes up again and it eases, and eventually you give birth to something and the contractions stop. And I think I'm at the point now where I can actually feel the contractions stopping.
Good for you. I'm excited for you. Congratulations. That's great.
So where can people find you, Molly? I know you're kind of full with your coaching programs and stuff, but I'm just going to throw it out there.
No. Okay. Reach out. It doesn't matter. I always try to help everyone that reaches out. I try to do my best to support anyone who can, because I know that's what people are needing. Molly Carroll Inc. You can find me on Instagram, on Facebook, molly-carroll.com. They can come to my website. They can find me in all those places. They can DM me.
Are you on Instagram?
I am Molly Carroll Inc. I am.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I always say Russell Kennedy, 2 S's, 2 L's, 2 R.
Oh.
2 S's, 2 L's. 2
You're
N's.
Good, because that's it's a good marker. I'm 2 L's and 2 R's, Molly Carroll.
And 2 L's.
Yeah, and 2 L's, Molly, MOLLYCARROLL. Yeah, 2 L's, 2 R's. Yes.
Always a pleasure.
Thank you, Russ. Thank you for having me. I thank you. It was so good to see you.
You too.
And where my son is going is Bellingham, so I'm right there. Okay. Yeah.
Pretty close to me.
What are you, an hour, 2 hours, Victoria?
Victoria is at the bottom of Vancouver Island, so we have to take a ferry to get over to Bellingham, that kind of stuff, because it's just right below Vancouver. That kind of thing too. But
beautiful country.
It's such a nice part of the world.
Oh my gosh.
It really is. Like, I wouldn't live anywhere else. Vancouver, I lived for a number of years when I was doing stand-up regularly. And then Victoria is where I'm from.
Yes.
So I came back to Victoria, and it's about 1/10 of the population. And it's just so much more chill here. So much better for my mental health and my psyche. I don't think I could have written the book if I had been in Vancouver still. I don't think I could have done it. So. Right.
Yeah, know thyself, right? Know thyself. Well, I mean, maybe our paths will hopefully cross in person one day.
Oh, yeah.
And I could give you a hug in person. But
absolutely.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure.
Yes, Molly, and I will have you on again.
Thank you, Russ. Have a good day.
You too. Bye for now.
Bye.